40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. Hunger is gnawing at you from the inside. The bare wind slaps you in the face. You're wearing nothing but a mammoth hide, and the flint tip of the spear in your hand was carved last night. In the valley in front of you, a 30-ton animal is grazing. And whether you eat dinner tonight, whether the children in the cave will live to see winter, depends entirely on the decisions you make in the next 20 minutes. That is what the Ice Age was. Not the beautiful snowy landscapes you see in documentaries. For 20,000 years, half of the northern hemisphere was covered in ice. Sea levels were 400 feet lower than they are today, and the species we call humans somehow survived in the middle of this hell. Not only that, they multiplied, they spread, they crossed continents, and they became your ancestors. How did this happen? What did they eat? Where did they sleep? How did they manage to wake up on the coldest night without freezing to death? In this video, we will explore those questions. First, let us look at the big picture. The most severe period of the last ice age began about 26,000 years ago and peaked 19,000 years ago. Scientists call this the last glacial maximum. The places where New York, Chicago, and Berlin stand today were buried beneath ice 2 miles thick. 2 miles. Imagine 7 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. That was the thickness of the ice. Where Manhattan stands today was being crushed at the base of a glacier. But just south of the ice, in the central belt of Europe and Asia, there was a completely different world. The history books call it the Mammoth Steppe. Almost no trees, knee-high grass, dry air, and bitter cold. This strange ecosystem fed the largest herds of grazing mammals the world has ever seen. Woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant deer, wild horses, and bison. There were plenty of animals to hunt. The real challenge was being able to keep up with them. And this is where humans did something incredible. They evolved not with their bodies, but with their minds. A mammoth weighs about 12,000 pounds. The average pickup truck is half that. You are trying to take down this animal with a stone-tipped spear. Alone, it is impossible. Even with 5 people, it is hard. But humans solved this in 2 ways. First, team tactics. Remains found across Europe show that Ice Age hunters drove mammoths off cliff edges or into mud bogs. The animal alone was stronger than 10 humans, but a mammoth stuck in a bog was no longer an overwhelming threat. They waited, they watched it tire, and then they drove their spears in. Second, tools. At the start of the Ice Age, humans had simple stone hand axes, but by the end of the period, flint work had become an art form. The people who lived in what is now France and Spain made blades shaped like laurel leaves, so thin that when held up to the light, they looked translucent. Making these took weeks. One bad strike, the stone shattered, and you started over. These people were engineers. There was also the spear thrower. Invented about 30,000 years ago, it changed the rules of the game. This simple tool, working as an extension of the arm, doubled the speed of the spear. You could throw it up to 60 miles per hour. A pointed projectile that could drop a bison from 20 yards away. It was the rifle before the rifle. Let us not skip past this question. Human skin starts to freeze at 30 degrees Fahrenheit. On the long nights of the Ice Age, temperatures could drop to 70 below. With bare hands, even with gloves, staying outside for more than an hour was death. So how did these people stay warm? The answer is in 2 words: sewing and fire. The needle. This small, ordinary-looking tool was perhaps the most important invention of the Ice Age. 40,000-year-old bone needles have been found in Siberia. Drilled, polished, ready to use. People were no longer just throwing hides over their shoulders. They were cutting them, shaping them, and sewing them. Tailored clothing meant fewer pockets of air. They figured out the logic of a modern coat 30,000 years ago. Reindeer hide on top, fox fur underneath, hides bound at the foot with dried tendon. The ancestor of what an Inuit wears today. As for fire, they had already had it for hundreds of thousands of years, but managing it during the Ice Age was a different matter. There was no wood, or very little. So what did they burn? Mammoth bones. They are so rich in fat that once they catch fire, they burn for hours. Remains found at a settlement in Ukraine show shelters built out of mammoth bones. Hundreds of bones, with jawbones used as door frames and skulls used as foundation stones. Both their fuel and their house came from the same animal. Food was also not as one-dimensional as you might think. Ice Age people did not just eat meat. Summer was short but intense. In that brief window, they gathered berries, nuts, root vegetables, fish, and bird eggs, whatever they could get their hands on. To save food for winter, they smoked, dried, and froze meat. They dug ice pits and buried game inside, where it acted as a natural freezer. Just as you open your refrigerator today, they lifted the cover of the pit. What we call nutritional balance was a matter of life and death for these people. If you live on meat alone, your body cannot get the vitamins it needs, and you die from something called rabbit starvation. They knew this. They knew which part of the animal served what purpose. Liver for vitamin C, bone marrow for fat. They ate the brain, too, for omega fatty acids. The things modern nutritionists tell us they have just discovered were already being practiced by experts 30,000 years ago. Why did these people not settle down? Because they could not. The herds were migrating, and they had to follow. But every new settlement was a new problem. Caves were not always available, so they built artificial shelters. A frame of mammoth bones, hides on top, dry grass on the floor. About 30 feet of space. 5 to 10 people inside. Outside, 50 below. Inside, with the fire burning, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. They piled materials gathered from 3,000 miles away into a single hut. Social structure was also the backbone of survival. Tribes were generally between 30 and 50 people. Fewer than that, and you would not have enough hands during a hunt. More than that, and you could not find enough food. Children learned early, at 5, how to weave rope. At 8, how to set traps. At 12, how to throw a spear. The elders, on the other hand, were walking libraries. They knew what to do during the last famine year, which valley to search in this season, and which plant was poisonous. There was no writing. Knowledge was passed only through speech, song, and story. And art. This always amazes me. These people, hungry, freezing, facing death every day, found time to paint on the walls of caves. The bison at Lascaux, the horses at Chauvet, the deer at Altamira. These were made 17, 30, and even 36,000 years ago. They gathered pigments, they made brushes, they descended into the depths of dark caves with oil lamps, and they produced art. It was not necessary for survival, but they did it anyway, because survival alone was not enough for them. They were also searching for meaning. When the Ice Age came to an end about 11,700 years ago, the world had changed. The mammoths were gone, partly from the climate and undoubtedly partly from human hunting. The ice retreated, the seas rose, and the forests advanced northward. But humans remained. And because they had passed through such a difficult apprenticeship, everything that came after would feel easy by comparison. Inventing agriculture, building cities, discovering writing, all of it was built on lessons learned out on the mammoth steppe. Today, while you sit in your heated chair, with your phone in your pocket, and a grocery store 5 minutes away, the foundation of all of this was laid by someone sewing hides with a bone needle. That person was your ancestor. And if those trembling hands had failed to push that needle through, you would not be watching this video today. The biggest lesson left to us by the Ice Age, I believe, is this. Hardship does not destroy a person. It shapes them. The brightest mind of our species emerged not in times of comfort, but in the harshest of winters. Would you have made it? If you want to keep diving into the deepest questions of history, science, and space like this, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video. Goodbye.